Okay, hi, this is Daria, and I'm speaking to Callum Fergusson today for our industry group at Creative Kilwinning. So, hello, Callum.
Hey Daria, how are you?
Happy to be here. And obviously, we are recording through Zoom, given all the restrictions and stuff that we're currently facing, but that's not going to stop us from this. So, could you give me a sort of brief overview of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So as Daria said, my name's Callum Fergusson. I've just come off the back of a 4-year university course at the University of West of Scotland in Ayr. I was studying commercial music. Graduated off the course in April, May time. I'm also working at a promotions company in Glasgow called PCL Presents, who do anything from sort of international artists to small artists. Now I work out of the venue Broadcast, which is owned by PCL. And my role would be to sort of book bands for shows within Broadcast or out with other venues. I also have my own promotions company on the side that does sort of smaller shows with bands that I like in venues in Edinburgh. We've done some in Aberdeen and Glasgow too. And then I'm also an artist manager of a band in Glasgow called Weekend Debt.
Excellent, that's quite a lot. So we rewind back to maybe like 4 years ago. So when you were sort of still at school. So what kind of made you decide to go down the music route?
I think it was always my favorite subject in school, and I didn't really find myself being that academic. Like I wasn't into sciences or anything, and like I liked other things in high school, but I didn't really see them or want them to be my career necessarily. And I thought I was playing in a couple of bands at the time, and thought I'd like to. Well, I think at the time in school I wanted to be a rock star or whatever, but you know so then I decided to think, oh well, I'll go and give music a shot and see what it's like at uni, and I just applied for a few universities.
What sort of courses did you apply for?
I think I had four choices, and they were all for music. There was obviously the one in Ayr at west of Scotland, then there's also Perth, the UHI. I applied for Aberdeen and also Edinburgh. I think it was the popular music course in Edinburgh, music business in Perth. I can't remember what the one in Aberdeen was, but I didn't go there, so I guess that doesn't matter.
No, ultimately it doesn't. Okay, so you went sort of fresh from school and you decided to go to UWS in Ayr. Was there anything sort of specific you actually had to do to get into that course?
Well, you had there was what's the word? You had to have a certain amount of grades from high school. And I think for the commercial music course, I think it was 2 Bs at higher and 2Cs at higher, but I can't remember exactly. And then once you'd submitted, you would either get a conditional or an unconditional, or you'd be rejected. For my case, I had a conditional offer. I think it was that I had to get 1C because I already had the I think it was 2Bs and a C from 5th year of high school. So then in 6th year, they said to me, if you can get a C, we'll invite you along for an audition. Now, I did get that, obviously. So then I went along for an audition. And that day, you sort of got a wee tour of the university. And I was just asked to, I think it was just like play a song or something like that on the guitar. And then just had a chat about the course. And that was that really.
So how long have you been playing guitar by that point?
Probably about 3 years. Nothing special, but probably at that point it was about 3 years.
Excellent. So then obviously you auditioned on and then you got into the course. So how did you find the course at UWS? Like it was obviously 4 years of your life. What sort of things did you get up to?
I think the whole experience of going to uni was great. The course itself was, I think, it kind of varied in terms of whether or not I liked it or not. There were some points that I thought it was great. There were some points where I thought it wasn't. But I mean, going from high school just outside of Edinburgh to living on the other side of Scotland. It was, at the time, it was quite a big change in my life. So I then went into halls in Ayr, and I met a whole load of friends there, which kind of made the whole experience easier going to university. And but having that sort of structure change from going to high school, you start the day at 9 o'clock, you finish at 4 o'clock or whatever, to having lectures maybe 3 times a week, and that was that. It was quite a change, but it's something you get used to quite quickly. I think moving on from first year into like second and third year, that's when the course sort of opened up a bit more, and we were given a bit more opportunity to, I'd say, express ourselves and what we actually wanted to do, maybe even like specialize, because the commercial music course, I think a lot of people, or at least at the start, a lot of people were going into the course thinking it was going to be, performance based, whereas and in first year, I wouldn't say it was totally performance based, but there was still performance elements. But once you got into second and third year, it sort of spread out a bit, and you could choose what you wanted to do. And there were a lot of people that didn't want to be performers in the first place, so that was when it opened up for them, and they got to experience other elements of the course and also learn about other areas in the industry.
What's up?
Now going on to fourth,
Sorry. There you go. Sorry.
sorry, going on to fourth year, that was when we had to do a dissertation and stuff like that. So that was a bit, it was unlike anything I'd ever done before, but thankfully I managed and got through it.
So what sort of path did you sort of follow through for uni? Because obviously you could kind of select more sort of towards what you wanted to do, maybe not learn about the things you weren't even interested in anymore. Like, what did you decide?
So I think in second and third year, I was on the path of learning more about recording and like production side of things. I took a couple of recording modules and learned about Pro Tools, which is software that you can record things on. But I think at the start, when I started uni, I hadn't given up on being in a band yet. I hadn't really realized that there were other things out there, to be totally honest. So that's what you learn about. I think from second and third year, I'd kind of moved on from performing and started looking more at production and also the live side of things, which is where I've ended up today.
So obviously being at uni, did you start up any projects or get involved with any projects while you were there?
Yeah, there were a couple. I mean, for for each module that you were part of, you'd be set a certain brief, so projects would come from there anyway. So like a couple of things that I was doing was sort of setting up like a new music blogs and things like that. Nothing spectacular, but it was something that I was enjoying doing at the time, writing about new songs or new bands or whatever. But then the promotions company, the one that I'm set up, came through uni as well. I set that up with my girlfriend, and we've been doing that for 2 to 3 years now, just putting on shows. And yeah, that came through uni, being one of the modules. We had to put on an event, or I think that was the brief. We had to put on a gig or some sort of event, and we just decided to do that, and realized that we enjoyed it, and just went from there.
Yeah, you'll find that's what I've always found when I'm speaking to a lot of people, a lot of my peers, is like it was almost as though like when you do go to uni and you do these courses, you're forced to do something for a bit of coursework, and then like you actually find that actually this works. I kind of enjoy this. Maybe I could make a living off it, and like this is how it works in the actual industry. So why not? And yeah, actually it's funny because a lot of the projects in around Scotland as well, like for example the SAMAs, started from a uni project, which is kind of funny. It doesn't necessarily mean that obviously you do need uni to make these projects happen, but when you're almost like forced, that's when it like totally happens. So what did you guys call it? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Going on that, I think sometimes when you've got that brief, it can sort of encourage you to go and put yourself out of your comfort zone a wee bit, just to make these projects happen.
Yeah, so can you tell me more about the promotions company? Like, what did you call it? What is it? What sort of shows did you put on, and how did you go about it?
Yeah, so our promotions company is called Moldy Soul Promotions. We've done, I think, about 10 10 to 12 shows roughly now. The first few that we did were in Glasgow. As I said, the first one was a uni project, so we didn't really have much time to put a gig together because so uni starts in at the sort of middle of September, and the end of the module was in December, and our gig was, I think, at the start of November. So we didn't really have much time to do it. But I think being put under that pressure to go and sort of meet all the deadlines of putting a gig on, found that we enjoyed that. So then we've been putting on shows. I mean, I think it's maybe like one every 3 months or so, before COVID anyway. One every 3 months, and just trying to stick to artists that we like, putting on shows with artists that we like, that we think we'd like to see them play in venues that they've not played in before. A venue that we use predominantly is Sneaky Pete's in Edinburgh, which is a great wee 100 cap venue. We love it, and we just that's where we would put on most of our shows.
Who have you put on so far?
Sorry, I missed that.
Who have you put on so far? What bands did you book?
So we've had, like I said, we've had like maybe 10 or so shows. We've had bands like Crystal, who are now Dead Pony. We had a show with Pleasure Heads that had Medicine Cabinet in their first Edinburgh show. We had a show with Gallus. They played at Sneaky Pete's as well. And then we booked Velour and Beta Waves as well. So two other sort of bands from Scotland that are getting a bit bigger. Those are the sort of main ones, I suppose. But we've done other shows as well with sort of local bands from Edinburgh and Glasgow as well.
Excellent. It totally seems as though you guys like literally caught these bands like really, really early before they went on to bigger shows and maybe sort of now demands bigger fees than maybe like
yes
as a sort of smaller promoter first putting on these shows, which is really sort of cool. How do you find these bands?
It's just various, really. I mean, social media is great for finding artists. I'm always finding new artists coming up on Instagram or Facebook. But it's also, just being involved in the industry and getting to know people. I think that, you talk about new bands that are coming through or that, you've heard a song and telling your friends to, look out for it coming. It's just kind of things like that. I think, for example, Medicine Cabinet, they were actually a band called Wives first. And then they got picked up by Kingdom Management and changed their whole image and their whole band, really. But before that, they were just a band called Wives, and we had them booked on a show prior to the one that we actually did when they were Medicine Cabinet, and it just kind of they didn't really have a name behind them or anything like that. So we just thought, we'll take them on, and then you look at where they are now, and they've got quite a big reputation in Glasgow. So yeah,
I mean, just goes to show these things really do sort of snowball quite fast for all the bands, which is really, really cool to see. Okay, here's a controversial one. What's the best / most memorable show you've put on with Mouldy Soul Promotions?
That's a good question.
Them all. Did you love all your bands?
Yeah, all of them. I think, well, we did a show in Aberdeen. We've just done one show in Aberdeen, but I think just, again, that was sort of going out of our comfort zone a bit and putting on a show in a city that we don't know very well. And we got two local bands and then two bands from Glasgow. And, the show went well. It was really busy. It was just a great night. Who
did you put on?
Yeah, that was Pleasure Heads and Sway were the two bands from Glasgow, and then I think it was Van Sleep and Black Tiles were the two from Aberdeen.
Cool. Yeah. Aberdeen, that's the thing. It's one of those cities that, like, I don't know, I've never even visited before. Never would have really thought that they do have a music scene. But I suppose it sort of goes to show that, like, if you do look hard enough, you'll find a band everywhere, and people willing to play shows and up for playing shows, which is really, really cool. So obviously you put on your own shows. and now you are working for PCL. Like, how did that come about? Like, how did you get a job with this bigger promotions company?
It was quite lucky, to be honest. They were looking for somebody to fill a position, um, and they so this one of my colleagues at work just messaged me on Instagram and said they'd seen the shows that I'd been part of putting on and just wanted to see if I was interested in coming in to talk to the bosses about it, and just went from there. Really, it was all very informal and just was quite lucky on my part.
Wow, that's so good. That is really, really lucky. A lot of the time you will find that sort of the music industry jobs, they're not really posted about. You won't go on a sort of like, a jobs website and see who's looking for who. It's very much sort of word of mouth and who you know and what you know. And obviously from your case, it's very much like your current colleague just sort of send you a message, which is nuts to think that this is the way that industry operates. But it's also kind of nice in a way, because if not necessarily if you've got good friends, but it's like opportunities can just arise out of thin air, which is cool.
I didn't see it coming, but it was nice to sort of. I knew that was what I was wanting to do, or at least I thought that was what I was wanting to do, and getting the opportunity to then go and do it was it's great. I mean, very lucky on my part, but I'm not complaining. It's been great since.
So what are some of the can you talk me through some of the tasks that you do for this promoter and how it all works, say maybe in comparison to like the little small scale that you were operating on to like sort of booking shows at the bars with this company?
Yeah. So obviously it's quite a different procedure from our own small promotions company. My sort of day to day, most of the tasks that I would be doing would be to book support bands for shows that are happening in broadcast, whether that's touring bands or local bands. If there's a touring act that's coming to Glasgow, they need a support band or one or two. So then it would be my job to sort of collate a list of bands that I think would fit the bill. I would then take it to the booking agent if there is a booking agent involved. Send those bands to the booking agent for them to then suggest which ones they'd like, and then it was just a part of me going to the bands and asking if they're available, offering them a fee for the gig, and if they confirm, then we just go from there. We get it announced. Now, when it comes to the bigger shows, I don't tend to do much on that scale because most of the time the bigger artists will have a support band booked onto the tour or to the show anyway. But there's also other things that I can do in those sort of shows. So you can, there's working in the box office or being a ticket collector at the front door, things like that. I've done that before, and yeah.
So how would you go about finding these sort of wee bands, like, and how, see if I was a small band sort of starting out and I was like, I'd love to play broadcast, like, could I just get in touch?
Literally, that's all you need to do. I mean, I'm always looking for new bands, but I'm more than happy to see an email sitting in my inbox and there's a new band that sent me music. I will always listen to it. That's great. I mean, arguably it makes my job easier. I don't have to go looking for it if it's coming to me. So of course that's I would encourage it.
Yeah, so you would encourage, yeah, say to everyone to give you a wee email should they want a wee sort of show and broadcast. That's really sort of cool. I want to also go back to you used to be in a band, or
Yes.
and also have been in several. Could you talk me through that as well? Obviously, because it just goes to show that not only have you been a musician and that's the sort of part you were interested in, now you're actually working in the live sector, which is obviously completely different to what you imagined yourself being.
Yes. So I mean, as I said earlier, when I went to uni, I thought that I was going to be the next big thing, or at least I believed that at the time. And I'm not saying you can't be that. You just have to be very lucky, obviously.
Also, not
So
it can still happen for you. Don't worry. We're not shooting that dream down. It's just
it does happen to some people. You just have to be, you just have to know the right people, and yeah. but for me, I was in a couple of bands in high school. One band that I was in for after high school as well. That was for about 4 years or so. And we did a couple of tours. So we did a couple of Scottish tours, and then we had some shows in like Manchester, London, Newcastle, which obviously at the time was quite a big thing, you know, not having even been to those cities, let alone played shows there before. And it wasn't necessarily, you know, we weren't, obviously when you're in a band you want everything to go well and you want shows to be busy, but it wasn't even necessarily about that. Like, looking back on that time, it was great to have that experience of playing shows in different cities, you know, new people coming to your shows. So well, actually, I started another band in uni, through a uni project. That was another module that was just like, you know, start a band and put on a show. So we did start a band within uni, and then that band, Anaconda, we were called. We stayed a band for about a year and a half until our drummer moved to London, which made it quite hard to practice. Um, it didn't quite work. You know, it was a bit before COVID, so you couldn't arrange a band practice on Zoom, you know,
Yeah,
that sort of thing. That didn't.
yeah.
I'm not sure if that would work now anyway, but
Oh God, the audio.
um,
Oh my God,
yeah, the lag.
the lag. Oh,
Um, and then yeah, so my final band that I was in, well, not my final band, but you know, the latest one that I've been in was a band called Fabric Bear, and that was like last summer. We actually sold out a show at King Tut's, which was quite cool. I mean, I'm quite proud of doing that. And that ended, I think, about this time last year actually. So yeah, that's been my band career so far.
what was the biggest thing that you learned about, say, being in a band? Even, you know, compared to when you were younger and you were like, yeah, I'm going to be in a band forever, this is going to be great. So then having that experience and sort of sitting here maybe 4 years later and looking back at it, like, what's the biggest thing that you learned from that sort of time?
I think, I mean, I could say various things have been, you know, I've learned a lot of lessons. I think playing in a band, you kind of, for me anyway, it kind of helped me gain some confidence in myself. Like before, when I was in high school, I remember before the first gig I did, I was absolutely, you know, I was terrified. I didn't want to step on stage. I didn't want to, well, I mean, I did, but you know, I had the fear. I had like, was really anxious before the show and really nervous. And the more gigs I played, that sort of disappeared. And I kind of, which gave me more confidence in myself outside of being in a band. It was just, you know, you don't have to worry about everything. Like it's going to be okay, and shows go fine, and then you move on. I think another thing I would say was that, you know, being in a band, you kind of learn about the live industry, even though you don't really realize you're learning about it. I think, you know, being a 16-year-old guy and trying to organize, you know, like booking events, I didn't realize that that was now going to be what I would be doing at 22. So I was kind of, you don't realize you're doing it at the time, but you're learning on the go, um, and meeting people as well. Even at the time, if you don't think that they're necessarily going to be a part in your future, you look back and you think, oh, actually, I've actually met you already. You know, it was a couple of years ago, but through being in a band, you meet lots of people. So that's also quite a useful thing that happens.
Oh, totally. Like, and that's the thing. Like, we here in Scotland, like, we think this is a big music industry. It totally isn't. It totally isn't. You can, like as you say, you will literally meet someone randomly or briefly say hello to them or something, and in conversation, next thing you know, a few years later, you're both working on a project together, or maybe you're both standing at an event together, or maybe, you know, people remember you. So I'd say it's always important to be really nice to anyone that you meet, because you never know.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. That's a sort of massive life lesson of that. So obviously you were in a band, several bands, all sorts of things that were started at your, well, university course as well. And then obviously now you are working for PCL, which is sort of really, really cool. You also mentioned that you are currently working as an artist manager. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, so yeah, the band's called Weekend Debt. They're like an indie rock band from Glasgow. I just decided that, you know, I'm friends with the guys anyway, and they were they've been playing gigs for a while. And for on my end, I thought, I think I could maybe take them a bit further than where they are already. At least that's what I was thinking at the time when I approached them. So it was literally just a case of, I was speaking to them, and I sort of said to them, if you guys are looking for a manager, I'd be happy to, give it a go. It wasn't something I'd done before, but having done it for, well, almost a year now, to be fair, I've actually only had about 3 months worth of gigs to work with. The rest of it's obviously been during COVID, but
yeah,
it was just something that came about quite naturally. It was just me offering to give them a hand and sort of utilize the things that I'd learned from being in a band.
Totally. Yeah. So what sort of things do you do for this band then?
It varies. It varies. Like I'm sure it's different for any artist manager. Obviously, different bands require different things. For me, I'm sort of in charge of booking their gigs, or at least going out and trying to find them good gigs. I also in charge of the social media stuff, so just putting up posts or updating the Instagram, stuff like that. I'm also try and get them on publications and like blogs and radio play, things like that. When they've got a new single out, and try and get Spotify playlists, that sort of thing.
Cool. So actually, it's quite a hefty task then, especially given the fact that you're also working your own promotions company and at an actual promotions company to pay the rent, and also you are doing artist management. Yep. So when it comes to the music industry, it is really easy to pick up projects, and I found that myself. Like there was times where I was working for a label, managing 2 bands, doing freelance press on top of also being at uni. And then obviously managing a sort of part-time job within a coffee shop, just like we have to pay my rent as well, which is a bit nuts. It was a bit stressful, but at the same time, like the buzz you get from being involved in so many projects at once is really, really good. And I'd say the one thing that obviously that being in the music industry has really taught me is like how to manage several different projects at once, which is, I suppose, you find it yourself. It's a good skill to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think being busy, you don't necessarily actually really realize that you're so busy, because you're for most projects, especially music based, if you love music and you want to do it, then they're not really like, I don't necessarily class them as jobs. They're sort of things that I have to do, but I want to do them, so it's fine. Like one thing that we were actually was sort of drilled into our heads at uni was the importance of having a portfolio career. And I mean, it's not something I would live by, but it definitely applies to this. Like you do pick up jobs along the way, and it's not like, you definitely can just have one job in the industry, but the more things that you do, it's definitely doable to have more than one job.
And also that goes to show that, like, again, going back to whoever you meet, you might know them as, oh, there's the artist manager that I know, but actually maybe they also work at a record label, maybe they're also a sound engineer. So it is very much like be nice to whoever you meet, because you never know what they might also do, and in turn you never know, they might actually help you out, or you might need them for a project or something, or maybe one day they'll recommend a job, or maybe there might be someone that you personally recommend a job to, because you're like, I know you work really well, and actually I think this job would be very well suited for you, so here's a wee message. I saw this, thought of you. Are you interested in this job? Which is, again, a sort of nice thing about the industry, I would say.
Definitely.
So let's go on to this sort of burning topic of we had COVID happen this year, hence why obviously we are communicating through Zoom. Like, how has that sort of affected everything that you're doing just now?
It's I would say it's had a fairly big impact. I mean, going back to the start of this conversation, I was still finishing uni. I'm still finishing my course at the start of this. So having to write my dissertation amongst all this, and not being able to go outside, stuff like that, it was hard at the start. It was. Thankfully, I fought through it and managed to get it all done in time. But obviously, then when it comes to my job, there haven't been any gigs, which means for my on my end, that means there's no bands to book. I mean, obviously for everyone else, it just sucks. It's rubbish that there have been no gigs. But it did impact me. It caused me to not be working for a little while and just trying to make money to get by, essentially.
So I know this is probably another sort of really difficult kind of question, and maybe we'll look back at this and laugh. What are your sort of predictions for how this sort of next while is going to go? Obviously, there's no right and wrong answer just now, given the fact that the way everything changes like Christ. Like from my own personal predictions, I've been reading articles from like the likes of Kilimanjaro, who obviously run a lot of the UK based festivals, hoping for April as a sort of start time for events again. But then again, I'm looking on a worldwide scale, and I'm seeing the likes of, Tame Impala rebook their shows in sort of Australia and New Zealand for December 2021. And given the fact that, well, the last gigs that we had access to were like in the UK and Scotland were like March. That's a really long time to go without a live event.
It's terrifying, yeah. It's really quite scary to think about it. I mean, I've been sort of under different impressions of when things are going to get back to normal. I remember I was part of a podcast in about the start of March, just when things were kicking off, and I was sort of under the impression, falsely, that things would be back to normal by May. A couple of months and we'll be past it. Looking back on that, I'm thinking I was an absolute idiot, but obviously I didn't know at the time.
We're literally yeah, still nothing.
So, but going on from that, I mean, I at the minute I sort of had hopes of maybe things going back to normal by the end of the year, but I don't. They won't be now. I know that for sure. In terms of booking gigs, it's like we had touring bands that were meant to be touring this year, so like November, October this year. We moved those gigs to sort of February, March, April, and we're now in the process of moving them to November/March, April 2022, which is terrifying. Really, it's horrible to think about. But I just think we've got to find ways of making things work before then, before things come back on a full scale. Like for example, there was a gig at SWG3 on Sunday night. It wasn't like a full scale gig, it was all seated and socially distanced, but it was something. It was something.
Yeah. Are you talking about the Last Night from Glasgow one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Last Night from Glasgow, obviously the sort of not-for-profit record label operating in Glasgow, put on the seated, I think it was like 60 capacity gig with the Bluebells, Lola and Slacks. So it's like a Bluebells acoustic set, Lola and Slacks, and Mark W. Georgeson. But the rules were obviously like it was 6 people to a table, so you pay £10 a ticket, I think, and it had to be 2 households. So 3 people from each household to obviously go with the rules that were obviously hitting. But again, that does mean that, say, you and your girlfriend, or and only another household, so you and potentially up to 3 other people from another household could actually go to this, which is a bit mental. And I suppose at the end of the day, this is where we're at just now.
It's not a sustainable way of making gigs happen, for sure. Yeah. It's just it was something, and something actually happened.
Mm-hmm. There's been obviously a lot of events that have recently happened as well. Sort of the live stream for #WeMakeEvents that also happened in Scotland for the big campaign to try and remind the government that actually there's all these people that aren't actually getting any governmental support, all involved in the live sector. Sort of jobs involving obviously like sort of tour management, stage management, all the equipment, sort of technological things that go on with putting on gigs and live events. And obviously the live music industry was the first industry to shut down, and it's looking like we don't have a definite return date. Whereas most hairdressers and shops and other sort of places did, which is
yeah.
frustrating to see, I suppose, but but what can we do, to be honest, especially when the government is now coming out and telling us that we should all retrain and other jobs. But I suppose at the end of the day, all we can do is see what happens, essentially try and wait this time out, and eventually when we do get back to some sort of normality, I'm sure people will be going out to gigs more than ever. Am I right?
Yeah, you'd like. I know for certain. For me, I just can't wait to go back to a festival, any sort of festival. Just that's what I'm excited for. Also going back to venues, gigs in general, but just live music is what we want back when it's ready.
That's the thing. I will never ever take a small show for granted, because there have been times where people and friends will invite me out to say smaller gigs, £5 on the door, and I'm like, no, I'll sit this one out. I catch that band another time. I've seen them enough, or nah, I just can't be bothered tonight. No more. I'm not taking that for granted. There's no way. So we'll see how we get on. Sort of going back to your career and the things that you've done, what sort of advice would you give to, say, young people that were like, I maybe kind of want to be involved in live music, but I really don't know how to go about it? Like, what would you suggest that they sort of do?
I think in terms of what you want to do in the future, if it's music, my suggestion would be have a look online and see what sort of education there is. Now, obviously, you don't have to go through education, but this is just my way. This is the way I did it. So I'd suggest that you go and have a look into courses, college or uni, see what you like the look of. If you can attend the open days, then go and do that, because you'll find out a lot more about the courses in person, and also the lecturers and the people that are involved with the course. And just give it a go, because it's great to work in the industry. Like it is really rewarding at times. Obviously, at the minute it's hard going, but looking to the future, I'm still excited to be part of this industry and going forward. I think I would just say to younger people, like, give it a shot, because at the end of the day, you don't always need to stick to being in music, but if you enjoy it, then great. You'll have a great career, something that you enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, another thing I would also say about going into education, which I also did, I did obviously 2 years of college, then 2 years at uni, and now I've went back to uni again to do a master's relating to music. Like, a lot of the time you will also find that, like, music courses don't necessarily need you to be the best at English, the best at writing, the best at spelling, the best at maths. It's a lot of the time, like, the coursework is sort of related to maybe being a bit more creative, to maybe thinking things out a little bit more, to maybe, like, writing music and being more creative with your approach, as opposed to worrying, oh god, I'm not very good at school, so maybe I shouldn't actually pursue this. Oh god, maybe uni or college is not for me because it looks a bit scary, and oh my god, like, am I actually going to manage the lecturers? And most people are actually really, really good. And another thing with uni, obviously, as we all find out, is like the people in your classes you may actually end up working with one day, whether that's a professional capacity, or just you decide to start a project just for fun.
Okay, it opens so many doors, for sure. Just going to uni, as you said, you meet the people, and you don't know what they're going to be doing in 3 years' time. But even when you start, it's like you're making that connection with them then, to see what they go on to do in the future. That may well be able to help you, or you may be able to help them. Like, that's something that can easily come from going to college or uni, anything like that.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose there's also the thing of Christ, can you hear me? Even if you go and you end up dropping out because it actually isn't really for you. Can you hear me? Yeah? Wait, are we good?
I can hear you now. Yeah, I think
okay.
So.
And there's also the thing of, like, you'll find that, like, even if you do go to uni and then you no
Lost again.
Let me move this laptop. Okay, how about now?
Yeah, got you now.
The one thing you find about uni as well is like if you go and you hate it and you drop out and it's like, this isn't for me, this is not what I want to do, I want to do music in my own sort of way, that's totally cool as well. And ultimately there have been people that have dropped out from the course because maybe they have actually decided that education really really isn't for them, for whatever reason, like, and they're still involved in music. I mean, that's still like a contact base that you've made and friends and people that you may end up working with, that you've met. So I'd always say it's worth it. Yeah, totally. Maybe, well, maybe from my perspective, and I suppose as you see from yours as well.
It's quite common, for people to realize, especially after how many years of school, 7 years of primary, 6 of high school, you might not want to do the full term, or like the full length of the course, but it's even the people that do drop out, the connection is there. Like, as you said, you might bump into them again, and they're doing something completely different, still music related, and you can then go and form a project or start a project from there. The
Yeah.
connections that you make through education are